Yeah, G-Checker signing in. Basically, I want to start this video out as a response to Jeremiah 28 and 17 that Brotha J issued. And he's basically feeding our people poison. And once we get into the video, you will see that he's basically on his own agenda, basically trying to debunk that the blacks in America and those that were in the slave trade are the true Israelites. And every time he tries, he always comes short. He always fails. And I'm not going to talk about him much. I just want you to see for yourself and comment. You know what I mean? In fact, post the video in that group and let him see it. Because once he sees this, that's going to be one more precept in his little fake ideology that he has to take out. So with that being said, we're going to get into the video.
And then I'm going to explain what this challenge is for those that's confused, and then I'll let you guys go about your day. All right? Now, because apparently, these men with these hundreds of years combined experience and 30 years in the truth never bothered to open up and actually find out what things mean. All right. Let me share my screen again. All right, so as I was saying here, for those that might have just came in, I was sitting and kind of thinking and eating chicken and thinking about the response, the few responses I have seen so far regarding this Jeremiah 28 challenge, and them all going the same vein by saying they're not the same. That's really all they're saying. They don't really give a full understanding, except they try to say Jeremiah 28 is symbolic. Jeremiah 28 is symbolic. Deuteronomy 28 is physical. So they're not the same. Therefore, they can continue preaching that, yokes of iron is a clue that the curses are upon the blacks from the transatlantic slave trade, and therefore you're the Israelites. Well, brothers and sisters, the thought came, hey, Jay, it wasn't like that, but the thought came was, go into the underlying text, as you like to do with other scriptures, for Deuteronomy 28:48, and find out what words are there and how they're used. Because we know the King James English is just a translation of translations. So I type in Deuteronomy 28:48, as you guys can see on the screen. Here we go. King James Version. Where is it? Right here. And the one that they love, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Go ahead and for you guys may not know, this is BibleHub.com. It's a good study source or, place of study. Also, you have the Logos Bible app, etc. Let me refresh my internet. All right, Deuteronomy 28:48. And he shall put a yoke of iron. So let's look up yoke. Yoke. All right, let's see if they got the usage in here. Yoke. All right. Use figurative of servitude. And here's the examples. So Deuteronomy 28 falls under figurative use of yoke, meaning you have a literal yoke, like, for example, when you yoke your mule or put a yoke on his mouth or however you yoke him. Matter of fact, let's show a physical yoke. Thank God for the internet. We can easily just find out what these things look like. So this is what a literal yoke looks like. When you yoke an animal or an animal that is yoked. That's literal yokes. All right. Now, let's look at some more pictures. There you go. There you go. There you go. Yoke of wood. So this is something probably close to what Nebuchadnezzar made, because the Lord told him to make bonds and yokes of, and it was wood, and put it around his neck, and then send it to the kings of the ruling nations. All right, Edom, Moab, Ammon, etc. All right, and told him that Babylon was coming. Now, so that's literal yoke, but scripturally speaking, it's used figuratively. You know, like the same kind of way where Christ says, "My yoke is easy." That was a figurative yoke, we're not walking around like this for Christ. All right, now, so figurative of servitude, there's Deuteronomy 28:48. Not only that, so we have figurative yoke of Deuteronomy 28. Now, here's the main one. Iron. Where there's Berzel. Iron. Now, let's look up Deuteronomy again. I want you guys to see something. Here's the different, for this word Berzel, it has multiple meanings. One means iron or stone containing iron. That sounds kind of close to you. Let's look at an example of that. All right, we have Deuteronomy 8:9, which says, "A land wherein thou shalt eat bread without scarceness, thou shalt not lack anything in it, a land whose stones are iron." So that's one usage of that word Berzel or iron. You also has as a raw material to be worked, as material of furniture, utensils, implements, cutting instrument of iron. So that's the usage. You also have a tool of iron. Then you have here iron in figure of unwatered earth. Deuteronomy 28. Remember this curse? 28 verse 23. Come on, internet. Hold on. Where it says, "And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass," meaning no rain. "And the earth that is under thee shall be iron," meaning drought. Unwatered earth, drought. So that's another use for that iron there. That's not literal iron. The earth ain't literally iron. But it shall be as iron because the Lord's going to dry it up because he's not allowing rain to come down. But then you have of Egyptian bondage here in these usages, but then it says of oppression. Deuteronomy 28:48. Brother J didn't say earth. Huh? Oh, right here? The earth shall be as iron. Oh, it didn't say earth. So here it says of oppression. Look at what two scriptures are there. Deuteronomy 28 and Jeremiah 28:14. I never seen this is my first time seeing this. Because like I told you guys, I discovered this just simply reading the scripture. I didn't even bother to go into the underlying text for Deuteronomy 28:48 to find out what yoke and what iron meant. The Lord revealed that just from reading the scripture.
See, now Brother J is bearing false witness on the Lord, saying that he revealed this bondage to him, and he doesn't have a clue in what he's talking about. So far, he's went on a rant, and all he could do is go to Bible Hub and see that Deuteronomy 28 and 48 And Jeremiah 28 and 17 got yoke of iron in it. And that magically settles his case. That's like one of the most rudimentary ways to try to, prove a scholarship or prove that you know what you're talking about just because two scriptures say the same thing. I mean, have the same words in the catchwords. Okay. So, he says, oh, the Hebrew Israelites, basically what they do is they find verses that have the same word in them, and then they try to act like it means the same thing, but they don't know the context of it. Well, Brother J, you're guilty of that right now. And we're about to see in a little bit. As soon as you get to your point, brother, get to your point. Stop ranting so much. All right, dog it.
But look at that. They're lying in the Hebrew text and usages. You have a figurative yoke, not a literal one, for Deuteronomy 28:48. And iron, which means oppression, in Deuteronomy 28:48. So now, not only that, it's the same word and same usage as Jeremiah 28:14. So for those black Hebrew Israelites who are trying to finagle their way out of this challenge and say they're not the same. See, the Deuteronomy 28 one was upon Israel and it was literal, therefore we're Israelites. And the one in Jeremiah 28:14 is symbolic. So then my next question is then why did God put yokes of iron around the necks of the nations at all? Why are they sharing in the same curse? But they're trying to say they're not.
And see, that's a good question by Brother J. Why would the nations face the same curse as Israel? That's a good question. So it pretty much lets you know that he didn't get his understanding from the Lord, because the answer is in the book. So why is he asking such an idiotic question? Now let's see here. Which nations were under the bondage of Nebuchadnezzar? Because he tries to say all nations of the world on earth went through those curses. And Jeremiah 28 and 17 basically tells you that all nations. Okay, so let's go to 27 and 3 to find out what all nations are. Okay, well, let me start over. Let me start from the first verse. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus saith the Lord to me, make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck. Okay, and send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of the Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and to the king of Zidon, by the hand of the messengers which came to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah, king of Judah. Okay, so what is this talking about? I mean, so why were these, he asked the question, why were these other nations under the same curses as Israel? Well, let's find out. Let's go to 2 Kings and 23. Okay, when you read verse 13, speaking of Israel, let's start at 12. And the altars that were on top of the upper chambers of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord, did the king beat down and break them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon, the king of Israel, had built it for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and Shemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. And he broke those images into pieces. He broke into pieces the images and cut down the groves and fill their places with bones of men. Okay, and then when you read down, let's see. Okay, and then you see more about and then as you scroll down, you see more about Josiah. And like unto him was there no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Neither after him arose there any like him. So now let's go back to Jehoiakim. All right, let's see what he did. All right, let's go down to verse 36. Jehoiakim was 20 and 5 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother was named Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. All right, so basically, Josiah ended all of that, and then you see it picks back up at verse 32 when the wickedness came back. Jehoahaz was 25, and this is verse 31. In verse 31, you see the same thing happening before Jehoiakim. And start at verse 31. Jehoahaz was 20 and 3 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother was named Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers done. So now when you see the evil that they had done, you see what Josiah tore down, and then next thing you know, you see the evil that they had done again. So Israel was still worshiping the gods of, let's see here, back in verse 13, of the Zidonians, of the Moabites, and of Ammon. Okay, and let's see here, and you're gonna say basically, what about Edom? Okay, so last we know about Edom is in Kings, 2 Kings and 14. All right, go down to verse 7, and you can read through this yourself. Basically, the king of Israel, he slew of Edom in the valley of the salt 10,000 and took Salah. Salah is a place of Edom by war, and called the name of it Joktheel until this day. So the reason why Edom was a part of it, because they were captives and they were under the rulership of Israel. So they took on the curses, and then you see why the other nations went under the curse, because they were a part of the corruption that Israel were worshiping their gods. Okay, so they all had to deal with the curses. So that was a good question, Brother J. We know that you didn't do your research. The more you talk, the more you let everybody know that you don't have a clue in what you are talking about. Okay?
Because they're not the same thing. They're two separate events. Well, yeah. Let's do that. Deuteronomy 28. We start at verse 47. So this curse would happen. Why? When the Lord spoke it to Israel, and once again, this goes into federal headship, like I tried to explain to the other guy. So anyway, but because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for abundance of all things, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee. You don't serve me, you serve your enemies. Against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. This can literally be translated as, and he shall put a yoke of oppression upon your neck until you are destroyed. That's literally what it can be translated as. and it would say the same thing as the King James Version, because that's what iron means, oppression, in that usage. Brazil. But then it says it's also the same usage for Jeremiah 28:14. So let's look at that one more time, quickly. Safari be acting stupid sometimes. All right. Let's pull up the big version. Jeremiah 28:14. But thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I have put a yoke of iron, or yoke of oppression, by way of Nebuchadnezzar, by the way, upon the neck of all these nations, that they may serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and they shall serve him. And I have given the beasts of the field also. That's why I said in hunger and thirst and in nakedness, because God had given the earth, the man, and the beast into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar to put a yoke of oppression upon all nations. So for the Black Hebrew Israelites who are saying they're not the same, they're not the same. Deuteronomy 28 is physical change. Jeremiah 28:14 is symbolic. Well, they're both symbolic. And it's both Jeremiah 28:14 and Deuteronomy 28:48 showing not only is it symbolic in Deuteronomy 28:48, meaning it's not talking about the transatlantic slave trade. That's what it means. It also means that all nations, including Israel, shared in that exact same curse. Exact same curse. Now, why would they share into the same exact curse? I read it all the time. And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon the enemies, thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. And we know through the history of Israel, all nations had conspired against them. So that's why you see in Jeremiah 28:14, all nations, including Israel, undergoing the curse of Deuteronomy 28:48.
Okay, since Brother J was using Deuteronomy 30 to kind of explain that all the nations were the enemies and the ones that persecuted Israel fall under the curses of Deuteronomy 28. I don't think that's what Deuteronomy 30 is speaking of, actually, but so if that's the case, then now you have to explain Jeremiah 27:17. And in this case, I'm going to the Septuagint, since that's one of the books that you like to read from. And it says, Israel is a wandering sheep. The lions have driven him out. The king of Assyria first devoured him, and afterward the king of Babylon has gnawed his bones. So, has Assyria felt the plagues and the famines and all of that stuff? I mean, you got to explain some of this stuff, Brother J. You know, you can't just make statements and not really get into it. You know, so that's my question for you. Did Assyria deal with those same plagues and those same curses that were in Deuteronomy 28 and 48, or the entire curses of Deuteronomy 28? I want to know if they were broken and not being lenders, you know, just basically all that stuff. So bring it out, Brother J. I look forward to your answer.
And if you want to bring it today, since you know they look at Deuteronomy 28:48 as prophecy, which is not, but if you want to fast forward it in time, with Deuteronomy 28:48 being figurative yoke, and the iron being used figuratively to meaning of oppression, And Deuteronomy 28:14, when Nebuchadnezzar was placed over all nations to oppress them, remember Isaiah 14? He that ruled the nations with iron, or with iron fists, or struck the nations in anger, or with wrath. Now the whole earth is at rest because obviously the Lord had delivered the people from the captivity, including the other nations. So with Deuteronomy 28:48, yoke being figurative, the iron meaning oppression, and Jeremiah 28:14 being the same word, same usage, meaning both of the meaning Jeremiah 28:14 is the curse of Deuteronomy 28:48. That's what that means for those that don't understand.
All right, that's what I was waiting to hear. Brother J say Deuteronomy 28:48 is the same as Jeremiah 28:17. All right, and I got more than this, but you know, I'm gonna just bring out this little bit just to show Brother J has the shoddiest form of apologetics that you might see, because his form of apologetics is saying basically that yokes of iron are the same in Deuteronomy 28 and Jeremiah because the word yokes of iron are there. But when you read Jeremiah 28:17 in context of Deuteronomy 28:48, there's just so much to show that they are not the same. Okay, let's start with Deuteronomy 28:48, just the first portion of the verse. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemy, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And these are some of the reasons why Jeremiah and 28 is different. Okay, when you read Jeremiah 27:8, it says, it will be that the nation or kingdom which will not serve him, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, which will not put its neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, I will punish that nation with the sword, with famine, and with pestilence, declares the Lord, until I have destroyed it by his hand. Okay, so Brother J said, hey, you know, that's basically saying the same thing. Deuteronomy 28 is talking about the pestilence and the plagues, but we'll get into that here shortly. This and basically the difference is the Deuteronomy 28, the yoke isn't an option. And Jeremiah 28, the yoke is an option. But we'll get into the option and just see. All right, the second difference is that all nations shall serve Nebuchadnezzar, and as long as they serve the king of Babylon, they won't be destroyed, nor go through the hunger, pestilence, or get slaughtered by the sword. All right, Deuteronomy 28:48 says Israel will be destroyed for not serving the Lord, and will be destroyed, and there won't be any options as in Jeremiah 28, unless Jay has gone completely off and it's comparing Nebuchadnezzar with serving the Lord God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. So all the nations in Jeremiah 28:17 basically are serving Nebuchadnezzar, and Israel is serving Nebuchadnezzar because of disobedience, and the other nations as we have seen are serving Nebuchadnezzar because we worship their gods, and some of them was in our lands, and that's why they took on the same curses as us. All right, the second difference, Jeremiah 29:5, build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them, shows the difference as well in this bondage. So it really doesn't hold up to Deuteronomy 28, because at verse 48 it says, in want of all things, which is clearly not the case in Jeremiah. If you can build your own house and plant your own gardens and eat the fruit of them, that's completely different than Deuteronomy 28 and 51, which says, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Which it seems as if Nebuchadnezzar doesn't eat your cattle or increase if you serve him, as thus said the Lord God of Israel. Also, verse 32 of Deuteronomy 28 shows the Babylonian captivity of all nations is different. So right now we have the one of all things, but under Nebuchadnezzar, we see that you could grow your own foods, you could plant your own crops, you could build your own houses. So you're not really in want of all things. All right, let's keep moving. All right, another difference is Israel can keep our family intact under Nebuchadnezzar's rulership, as seen in Jeremiah 29 and 6. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminished. Which isn't the case in Deuteronomy 28, as shown in verse 33. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. Okay, and as well as Deuteronomy 28 and 33, the fruit of thy land and the fruit and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thy eyes, which thou shalt see. So that means everything you do will be taken over by this other nation that the Lord sent against you. As you see in Jeremiah, that's not the case with Nebuchadnezzar. All right. Another difference is Israel has the option to go willingly into captivity, as seen in Jeremiah 29 and 16. Know that thus saith the Lord of Kings, that sitteth upon the throne of David, and all the people that dwelleth in this city, and of your brethren that are not gone forth with you into captivity, thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will send upon them the sword, the famine, and the pestilence, and will make them like vile figs that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. And I will persecute them with the sword, with the famine, and with the pestilence, and will deliver them to be removed to all the kingdoms of the earth, to be a curse and an astonishment and a hissing and a reproach among all nations, whither I have driven them. And in Deuteronomy 28, you don't see an option of go into captivity and live or die. So when you read Deuteronomy 28 and 49, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation with fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old, or show favor to the young. Anyone can see in Deuteronomy 28 and 48, there is no option to put yourself under bondage. Jeremiah 27 and 11, but the nations that bring their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, those who I will let remain stay in their land, saith the Lord, and they shall till it and dwell there. You see all of these stark differences, but Brother J said it's the same. So now we understand that Brother J doesn't have a clue in what he's talking about when he says Deuteronomy 28 and 48 is the same as Deuteronomy 28 and 17. There's just so many differences, and I could go on, but I'm going to give you a few more. All right? In Jeremiah 28 and 17, the yokes of iron come from false prophets, because the Lord gave clear directions not to listen to the prophets in Jeremiah 27 and 14. Therefore, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that speak unto you, saying, Ye shall not serve the king of Babylon, for they prophesy a lie unto you. For I have not sent them, saith the Lord, yet they prophesy a lie in my name, that I might drive you out, and that ye might perish, ye and the prophets that prophesy unto you. But these false prophets came with false prophecy, and the people listened, as shown in Jeremiah 28 and 10. Then Hananiah the prophet took the yoke off from the prophet Jeremiah's neck and break it. And Hananiah spake in the presence of all people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, even so I will break the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, from the neck of all nations within the space of 2 years. And the prophet Jeremiah went his way. So as you see, the wooden yoke was switched to iron from false prophets, which isn't shown in Deuteronomy 28. So, Brother J, that's just a few points to show that you don't have a clue on what you're talking about, and I got more and more and more to bring. So right now, you've been G-checked, and your challenge fails. Deuteronomy 28 and 48 is not the same as Jeremiah 28 and 17. And with that, I say shalom.